When we begin to quilt, we want fabric, and we want it fast. So how do you accumulate a stash without breaking the bank? Well, you don't always need brand new. You can also repurpose fabric, and today's guest does just that. The minute that I saw Chris English's Instagram feed, I immediately asked him to be on the show. His quilts are bright, textured, and so creative. And they're entirely made from donated fabric and flea market finds. So grab your sewing and a cup of tea, and here's my interview with Chris English. Welcome today, Chris. Thank you for being on my show. Where in the UK are you coming from?
I live in Huddersfield, which is a small town in West Yorkshire, which is in the north of England. So if you're familiar with Manchester and Leeds, it's exactly in the middle of those two.
The big question is, how did you come to quilting?
I came to quilting after studying textiles at university. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do at university. And I did art and design at college, and then I went to uni to do textile design. But when I left, I couldn't get a job doing it. But I always maintained an interest in colour and pattern and fabric and print and design. It eventually led me to quilting. So I found a Liberty book of sewing, which had a really simple brick quilt pattern, which I made. And I made it with Liberty fabric as well. I didn't realise you could choose your own fabric at that point. And yeah, it kind of stemmed from there, really. So I'd say I've always been interested in art and design. And I liked making the quilt because I finished it. And listen, my binding was terrible, my corners were wonky, but I finished it and it was practical, and I was able to give it to somebody. So I loved making it.
So are there any quilters in your background?
My mum's quite, she sewed when she was younger, and she always made clothes. She always tells me about when she was, because she grew up in London, and she'd tell me that she'd finish work and then she'd go home via the market, and that she'd make a dress that she could wear that evening, like a shift dress or something. And so I was never really aware of that, but I think it's always been something that's quite normal in my family.
Yeah.
But no quilters specifically, no.
Was there a sewing machine in your house then while you were growing up?
Yeah, there must have been. I don't recall being aware of it, but when I got one to go to university, it was completely normal. It wasn't a big deal. It was like, right, I need this, and yeah, let's get one.
So in textile design, are you talking about all different types of fabric? Like, were you dealing with all different types of textiles, or were you just dealing with printed, like surface design?
Yeah, it was more surface design. So lots of screen printing, all that kind of stuff, really, which I absolutely love. And I've done some recently. I've tried to get back into it a little bit. I've done some evening courses and some different things, and I've experimented with block printing, and you can get the decolorant paste that takes the color away from fabric. I've been experimenting with that on some of my quilts as well, so that's been fun. So this is a long time ago that I went to university, so it's something that has stayed with me, that love of working with textiles and being interested in that kind of thing. So
you made a quilt. Now, this was just after university?
No, this was years later. It's strange because I'd always done, following university, I had a job and a life, and I'd always done like the odd evening class, but nothing ever really stuck until I made that quilt. So I just happened upon it, really. And then that's what I liked.
So how quickly did quilt number 2 follow quilt number 1?
Oh yeah, it was pretty quick. And since that first it hasn't really stopped. So it was, it was a passionate affair that began quite quickly and steadily escalated.
And did you have a stash of fabrics left over from uni?
I had some fabric that I'd printed, and I'm always at flea markets and charity shops, and I suppose I did, but I didn't know it was a stash at that point. I suppose it was just a collection of stuff I found interesting.
And were you always about recycled fabrics right from the very beginning, or is that something that you've evolved into?
The latter, really. It's evolved. As I say, I love secondhand shops and finding stuff that I can use in my quilts. But also, I love buying new fabric as much as the next person. But I've just kind of gravitated away from that and thought, well, there's a lot of fabric that exists that I can use, and occasionally I might use, if I see something really special, that I might buy it, but I might buy it new rather, but that's very rare now.
So you've got a wonderful background in color and design. Did you bring that to quilting right away, or were you making other people's designs?
I made my own apart from this brick one in the book. I kind of just went with what felt right to me. So, you know, my quilts aren't what I'd describe as technically proficient, probably the opposite of whatever that is.
Well, I think that there's the two schools, you know, there's the people like us who come from a design point of view, like either you want the color or whatever, and you're trying to make what you see in your head. And then there's the other people that come from the technical side of it. They know how to put a square together, then they know how to make an HST, and they build upon that following patterns. And it takes a little bit longer for them to find their own design aesthetic.
Yeah.
But
whereas for me, yeah, I'm like you, I think, and it's probably going to take me longer to do things properly.
well, you've got this potential in your head, and then you begin to implement it and going, oh, maybe 16 fabrics coming together in one location isn't the best idea.
Definitely a journey, and my quilts, it's really funny looking back for Instagram. You can see how they've evolved and how I've had different phases, and I've perhaps learned a different technique, and that's had an influence for a while, but then I've adapted it and it's continued to kind of inform my quilting.
I notice your colors are all over. I don't know if you know much about me, but I love color. And I always say one of the big beginner mistakes is people keep buying the same color over and over again, and they don't stretch that color zone that they like the palette in. But you're all over. You don't seem to be afraid of color. You just dive in and mix and match. And
I kind of believe in trusting your instinct when it comes to color, and kind of going for it. And I think there's a place for the color wheel and all that kind of stuff, but equally there's a place to break those rules and try and do your own thing. And if you like a color combination together, then for me that's good enough. Go for it.
Do you have a favorite color?
I'm really torn on this, because probably like a really bright pink is my favorite color, closely followed by orange and blue. But I tend to like bright colors, and I tend to like mixing them together.
So what is your favorite quilt so far?
It's usually whatever one I'm working on at the moment. So at the moment, I'm having a bit of a 9-patch love affair, and I've made this 9-patch with like a pair of old mechanics overalls, and that fabric is bright orange. It's like a fluorescent orange, but it's I think it's worked pretty well, and I've used like a ton of scraps as well. So I'm pretty pleased with how that's going. It's here if you want to see it quickly. I don't know how it'll look in the light, but
that's lovely.
It's massive as well. I'm like 6 foot and a bit tall, and this is taller than me, so it's big. It's only half of it, so I'm not sure exactly what I'll do. But in here, there's a mix. You can see, like there's this gold color is kind of like an old curtain, and then there's definitely this is old shirt. There's more curtain there. You see that red?
Right.
It's kind of, I mean, there's not a natural fiber in it, but it is. It's fine in this quilt, I think.
I get a lot of questions about working with mixed fabrics. What's your best advice to give somebody who's just starting off with, they've been using quilting cottons all along and now they want to branch out into other fabrics? What do they need to know?
Honestly, I just go for it. So I don't stabilize. Often though, what I'll do is when I'm quilting my quilts, I either hand tie them, because me and basting don't get on, it's fair to say. So I'll either hand tie them after spray basting, or I'll hand quilt and I'll machine quilt, and nothing will have a chance of moving. So I quilt the life out of it, really. So I would just try it and see. I do some small samples before I start a large quilt, and I'll use them I'll make it into a cushion or something. But I'll have a go at a small sample and then see how the fabric works.
So you don't use stabilizer. Do you wash all the fabrics first?
No, if it's like from an old shirt that's been to a charity shop, then they've washed it and all that kind of stuff, so it's fine. And if it's secondhand clothing, it's been washed plenty of times, so I don't think it's going to shrink or color run or anything like that.
And do you use many knits, or do you always use a woven fabric?
Always woven so far, yeah.
So you are now one of the Aurifil artists for 2020. How did you get connected with Aurifil?
I still have a couple of friends, and they used to have a quilting shop in Huddersfield. Now, unfortunately, it closed, and they've moved on to other things. But they knew a couple of the people at Aurifil, and we went to Festival of Quilts in the UK, and we saw them, met them during the day, and then in the evening we had a drink. And I suppose over the last couple of years, I've gradually got to know a couple of people there, and I saw that the application process had opened, so I just went for it and applied. I'd encourage everyone to apply.
And what happens now that you're an Aurifil artist of 2020?
Yeah. There's a calendar of challenges. So there's effectively a list of challenges which you sign up for, and then the idea is that you complete the challenge, and then as you're doing it, you post on social media, and then at the end you post the final version of what you've done, and it goes onto their blog. So it's so you don't have to do every challenge. It's encouraged that you do as many as you feel comfy, and obviously you use Aurifil, and it's really good because it's the opportunity to experiment and do something different and try out different thread weights, because I love their 12 weight. But recently I did a challenge, I used the 80 weight because it's something that I would never normally try, but they sent it me, so I had a go, and it's quite good fun from that respect.
I've got some 12 weight of theirs that I've picked up at a couple of shows. They were giving it out. And I just did a free motion quilting class with Melissa Marginet out of Manitoba, and she recommended using 12 in the top thread. And
12 in the machine.
I've got to use it.
Brilliant. It's because I love hand quilting with the 12 weight, but also, putting 12 in the top, it doesn't quite look like hand quilting, but if you've got a lot of quilting to do, then it looks pretty good, I think.
Have you mixed the threads? Like, have you done rows of 12 and rows of 40? And
oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, listen, on some of my quilts, this is a good example behind me. You probably won't be able to see it because of the light, but I mean, the quilting on this is super dense. But
wow, yeah, I can see it. Yeah,
but there's a mixture there of kind of hand quilting and then like matchstick quilting through the machine. So yeah, I absolutely mix it.
And how long did that take to quilt?
That was this is a big quilt, and it took months of doing it. And with this one I learned, because it's probably a double effectively. I kind of cheated and did a quilt as you go method. So you can see that the crumb blocks are made into they're 6 inches square, and I've done them as 3x3 sections. In fact, I'll be back 1 second. What I do is I make it like that, so I can put it through the machine, because when I first made a quilt, I made the top and I basted it, and I tried to put it through the machine, but we fell out big time because I was trying to wrestle a double through a domestic machine, and it just wasn't happening. So what I do now is make the blocks this like a smaller block, then effectively quilt as I go. And then when I join them together, I'll put some extra quilting over the join so you can't see it.
Okay, that's a clever way.
Which might not be a purist's approach, but you can't tell. You can't tell us with it.
Your Instagram handle is a full English. Now, I'm married to a Brit, so I know what that means, but what does a full English mean?
So a full English is a traditional English fried breakfast, and they're wonderful, but you can't have them all the time because it's a heart attack on a plate. But it's sausage, black pudding, beans, bacon, fried bread, mushrooms. Yeah, I think that's probably it. Probably avocado nowadays, but it's mainly fried food. And they're lovely, and you have it with like tomato sauce or brown sauce, and they're great.
It's funny talking to you. All the differences. We're talking the same language, but brown sauce and tomato sauce, ketchup.
Yeah, ketchup. I don't know if you get brown sauce in Canada.
No, we don't. Well, it's not a common thing. There's definitely it's available, but it's a specialty item like Marmite and Vegemite.
Yeah, I love brown sauce. It's nice. It's hard to describe. It's kind of spicy, but you tend to have it with sausages mainly.
So you mentioned that big quilt show. Is that in London? No, it's not in London. Where's
No,
that big quilt show?
It's in Birmingham.
Birmingham.
So, Festival of Quilts. Yeah, obviously this year it was cancelled, but most years it's it's always been in Birmingham as far as I'm aware, and it's really good. Anyone can enter, and the selection process at the moment isn't juried, so you can submit a quilt and it's going to get shown. So, which I think is so liberating and so exciting. So I always go for it, and I enter. Like last time, I entered into loads of different categories. I probably, if you took the actual description of the category very literally, then my quilts weren't probably right for it. But I thought, well, it's kind of, why not?
Why not?
Why not? What's the worst? That's kind of my approach really with quilting. But what's the worst that can happen?
So it's not juried, it's just an exhibition of quilts?
Yeah, there's a prize. I think the prize is pretty good actually, and I've never been close to winning, but and it's really good because the standard varies massively, but you see a whole range of quilts, and it's not influenced by a judge or a judge's what their personal choice is. They're there, and if you like them, great, and if you don't, well, there's plenty of others to see. So I think it's really interesting, that approach.
Is there a People's Choice Award?
Yeah, that gets voted for. I think it was a ballot system, but yeah, there's People's Choice, and then in each category there is a judge's choice. I think there's like first, second, and third as well. I mean, I don't know because I haven't ever worried.
You haven't got that far.
Yeah.
You mentioned that it's not on this year. How else has COVID affected your quilting?
Well, I've probably done more because I'm working from home. I don't have to commute, so when I finish at work for the day, I can get straight on with stuff. So certainly at the start of the pandemic, I was doing loads of extra stuff. So that's probably slowed down a little bit now. So I was due to be teaching at the festival, so that's a shame that got cancelled, but hopefully that'll come back next year and that'll be cool. And yeah, I was planning as well on going to Quilt Con in February, and that was in Atlanta, which I've really, I went earlier this year to Austin. I had a wonderful time. I love the States, so I was kind of looking forward to that. But it's the right decision, and people have to be safe. And it's a quilt show versus people's health, so it's not really a decision, really, is it?
So how big is your stash? Do you still have access to the recycled fabrics at the moment, or you could quilt for years?
Oh, for years. People, I reckon for a decade at least. People at work bring me old clothes because they all know I quilt now. So people at work bring me old shirts and stuff they don't want, and then I still find it very hard to resist. Like at the flea market, if someone's got a pile of fabrics, I'm trying my best not to buy anything, but I do find it hard because I worry that it won't get used.
And how do you sort recycled fabrics? Do you have your shirts in one area, or your stripes in one area, or your denim in one area, or is it just in a pile in a closet?
I've got a spare room in my attic, and it's kind of loosely described as a studio, but really it's a storage space of fabric.
Okay.
It's everywhere. And I think as well, though, because of that, sometimes I kind of throw it in there, but sometimes I'll be looking for something. I've got quite a good memory for fabric, and then I'll see something I've forgotten about, but I'll see it next to something else, and I think, right, that works well, and so I'll pull that from the stash, and then I'll start. That might spark an idea for a quilt.
How early do you start prepping your fabrics? Like, do you have a collection of fabrics together thinking, well, that might make a quilt, but I'm working on these 3 others at the moment, or is it very impulsive in the moment?
It's a bit of both. It's probably impulsive in the moment, really. So I'll kind of I have a lot of sketchbooks where I draw out designs and I stick different things in that have inspired me, and then that'll kind of gradually morph into becoming like a quilt design. But often the final quilt looks nothing like what I've drawn. I just use that as a bit of a research process, and then I'll have a look at my stash and I'll pull things out, and I suppose it's quite impulsive, really.
I'm just trying to visualize what your storage space looks like, with a little bit of envy.
No, I'm trying to do the opposite. I don't want to think what it looks like. It's a mess.
So are you a member of a guild?
Yeah, so there's a guild, there's a Huddersfield Modern Quilt Guild, which I'm a member of. And then I'm also a member of the UK Quilters Guild.
Are there lots of quilting guilds in the UK?
I don't know if there's lots, not compared to like Canada and the States, definitely not. But I think in most big towns and cities, there's probably a couple at least. So yeah, there's probably a fair amount.
Are there a lot of members of these two guilds? They sound like they cover a lot of area.
So the UK one, yeah, that's massive. But the Huddersfield one, I mean, Huddersfield's a big-ish town. It fluctuates probably from kind of 10, 15 up to about 25, 30 on a regular basis.
Are you doing Zoom meetings now?
Some are and some aren't. So some have just kind of gone on hiatus and some are having virtual sewings and doing Zooms and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it really depends on the guild that you're in. The UK guild are doing loads of stuff. They've been super proactive, actually.
Our guilds, like the ones that I belong to, they've been really working hard. One, to keep everybody connected, and two, just to help people with their mental health and connecting with other people, and having dates on your calendar.
Yeah, it gives structure, doesn't it? And a reason to get dressed and a reason to get your sewing machine out and do something. Yeah, I can relate to that.
I've just have no clue what day of the month it is. They just all seem to blur into one another. It's crazy. Do you have a favorite tool? Like, do you use traditional tools working with all this recycled material, or have you improvised some different things?
No, to be honest, I'm pretty, pretty standard setup really. So I've got my cutting mat and my rotary cutter and a couple of good pairs of scissors. My sewing machine it's a Bonina, but it's relatively new, but it's not fancy at all. It's not got a computer brain or anything. It just sews straight lines, and it's the one that people use here in colleges and stuff. So it can take a lot of using and wear and tear. It's perfect for how I quilt, so it's pretty robust.
Well, I say that about all, when people want to buy a sewing machine, I'm always saying you're going to do 96% of your sewing straight.
Yeah, exactly.
And you want one that can do that well. I have an old Bernina 910, and it is a workhorse. I just love the sound that thing makes. I have a newer one, the 750.
The one I've got now, it's a 1005 or a 1008. I think it's probably the next one on from the 910, because the first one I had, like a long time ago, was a 610 or a 620. But I think I've just got the latest model of that now. So
you were mentioning that you were going to be teaching a workshop at you were actually teaching.
Yes.
So what were you going to teach?
Yeah, the kind of crumb block method that I use for these kind of quilts.
Right.
And then I also teach, the previous year I've also taught like portholes as well.
Oh,
cool. Which is kind of like reverse. So I'll teach both. So this is a crumb block kind of thing with a porthole in it. And then a bit of machine quilting. And that's kind of the class that I teach. So it's a little bit of a mixture of improv-y stuff with an actual proper technique.
Right. So I've got a lot of viewers looking for speakers for Zoom meetings and lectures. Have you started teaching that via Zoom yet?
Not yet, but I've done the thing that lockdown has made me do is get better, or hopefully better, at doing things like this. And I've done a couple of Instagram stories, and because obviously being British, I'm not that keen on self-promotion and all that kind of stuff. But you have to, and it's the modern world. You've got to get on with it. But if I'd like to do more, is what I'm saying in a roundabout way.
I love your technique. It sounds so fascinating. I would be interested if you've got one. So how do people get a hold of you? You're on Instagram?
Yeah, Instagram.
Instagram's better, a full English, based on your name, Chris English.
Exactly, yes. Listen, it's a bit ordinary, isn't it? It's a play on words, obviously, but I decided on it, and I keep thinking about, should I change it? But I've kind of, at the moment, I haven't.
Oh, I think it's a great one.
Oh, do you think so? I might keep it.
Yeah,
then.
I do.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. I find like even choosing my name for my website, it becomes part of you. It just becomes part of your self-identity. And I can't imagine changing it now. Yeah. What's better than a English breakfast?
Exactly. That's a good point.
So I've got a personal journey that I'm on this year to make a label. I haven't been labeling my quilts. Do you label yours?
I could do with going on the same journey. I don't, well, occasionally I do, but I never, no, I don't really, is the honest answer.
So we'll go on the journey together. We'll share notes.
The silly thing is, I did get a load of labels made, but I didn't really like them, so I only occasionally used them.
You mentioned you made a couple of mistakes with your first quilt. Do you have a beginner mistake that you would recommend new quilters do not do?
The silliest mistake I've made, I still can't believe I did this to this day, was for whatever reason, I'd attached the hanging sleeve to the back of the quilt, which I was super pleased with. But for whatever reason, I hadn't put the binding on. So or had I done the front? I can't remember. Either way, I ended up binding and I ended up sewing the hanging sleeve shut on both ends and having to unpick it all, which I don't know.
I could actually easily see that happening. I think I had to stop myself on the first one because I was thinking, oh, it'll be easier if you do it this way. Yeah, and then I realized, oh, that's not going to work.
Yeah, and listen, that also tells its own story, because that was when I used to machine quilt my binding on the front and the back, but now I just machine quilt it on the machine, bind the front and then hand sew the back. So it wouldn't happen now. But yeah, at the time as well, my corners, they're not corners, they're like a gentle sloping curve. But
suggestion.
Now, yeah, after quite a couple of years of practice, I'm quite happy with where my binding is.
Do you give quilts as gifts, like
yeah.
for Christmas and the holidays?
Yeah, my teenage son wishes that I didn't, because he used to want like PlayStation games and stuff. Now he wants beer, but he gets quilts. But life happens, doesn't it? For work colleagues as well and different friends, I've made baby quilts over the years. But yeah, mainly my son gets them.
How many does he have?
Oh, he's got loads. I've been quilting for about 5 or 6 years, so he's got at least that many, and probably double that for Christmas and birthday. So yeah, he's got at least 12.
I'm kind of working through my family. I've got one son that still needs a quilt, so I need to get cracking on that one. Are all of them gifts, or do you give some away? Do you do charity gifts, or do you keep them?
A mix, really. So most get given away. They all get used. That is one thing that happens. I absolutely use all of them. So they're on a kind of rotation. Now it's getting toward winter here. They'll get used, whether on my bed or just as a lap quilt kind of thing. And then, yeah, I have given some away for charity stuff as well. So
you're in Quilted by Uppercase. I love that book. I love that magazine.
Yeah, brilliant, isn't it? I was super pleased because I'm in between some quilting royalty. I'm in between Carolyn Friedlander and Denise Schmidt. So, oh, wow. 2 celebrities. Yeah, and I'm in the middle. So, and I think it's more by luck than judgment, but still. My one of my quilting friends, Diana Fox, is in there. She does some beautiful scrap work too. No, I can't see enough good things about Uppercase Magazine. I find, I'm not sure if you have many copies of the magazine, but if I'm ever needing a creativity bump. Yeah, absolutely. I've got a few of the Encyclopedias of Inspiration. There's a couple I've got that I find really useful to look through, and it's just nice to have a look at, and yeah, very inspirational. I just located one of the back issues of like just a copy of Printed, which I think she did a couple of years ago, and I can't wait for the next one. I think is Ceramics, coming out very shortly. Yeah, I think it is. Have you got the feed sack one? No, I don't have feed sack. That's the next one on my list to get. I think that's the one that I bought first and got me interested. But yeah, that's really cool. I like I'm going to pronounce it wrong. Ethereal, the one with all the tickets. Oh, Ephemera. Ephemera, that's what it is. Ephemera. Yes. I can look at those for days on end. It's really weird, isn't it? I love collecting stuff like that. I've got loads of collections of different stuff, but I'll collect stuff like that and I'll put it in scrapbooks, because I think whilst initially you might think, well, that's a bus ticket and it might not relate to a quilt. It could be like the font or the color or the combination of colors. There's there's another good book. Where is it? Now, I don't know if you'll get it in Canada, but it is, hang on. This one is called You Can Find Inspiration in Everything, and it's by Paul Smith, the UK fashion designer. So he's primarily a menswear designer, but he's a super interesting person. He's a Sir now as well. He's a Knight of the Realm. So his clothes are best described as kind of classic British tailoring, but with a twist. Right. So his view on it is that, you know, you can absolutely find inspiration in anything, whether that's the bus ticket we were talking about, or a record cover, or an art gallery, or, you know, it doesn't have to be a traditional source of where you might think you might find inspiration.
Have you ever done a 100-day project?
No, I haven't. Have you?
No, but I'm thinking about doing one next year, 2021. I'm not sure if you were at Quilt Con in Nashville, but they did a exhibit of 100 days, and there was this very inspiring one of a woman. I think they were 4x6 cards every day.
Oh, wow.
And they were all out, and she just did one every day. And of course it pushes you, you know, you have the enthusiasm for the first 25.
Yeah.
And then those initial ideas begin to feel repetitive, etc. So I'm trying to figure out, how can I do it my way?
Yeah, I think you've just got to make it become a habit, haven't you? Getting into that routine, which is easier for some people.
Easy for some people, but then there's some days where you're just going, oh my God.
Yeah, I definitely get days when I don't look at a quilt, or I don't do any quilting. I just, because some days I feel like anything I touch just goes wrong. So those days I just put it all away and just think about, I go for a walk or do something completely different.
Yeah, I have a set of fabric, like scrap pieces by my sewing machine, that I try to make a block before I start doing anything else. And that sort of centers my brain.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And if my 1/4 inch is not really where it wants to be, then I've only done it on a piece of scrap.
Yeah, you kind of got anything bad out of the way. Yeah, that's a really good idea. This is another book I like. You probably got this one, the Sherri Lynne Wood one.
Oh, yes.
So I love that book.
I also met Sherri Lynne Wood at Nashville. It was so funny. She was in the workroom booth, and this woman was calling me over. And I know the people at the workroom. They're from Toronto. I just thought it was a friend of Karen's, and sat down, and I was chatting away. And then suddenly I realized who I was talking to. And she had me doing a little embroidery project for one of her future quilts. Oh, wow. But it was lovely. She was a lovely woman. I really enjoyed
I had a very brief chat with her, and she was super friendly. Really cool. Yeah. And then, sorry, I'm going through my book collection here, but I find them all very useful. That's the Quilted Bend one. So that is a beautiful book. And I use these quite a lot, actually. And then the other one I like it's called Unexpected and Unconventional by Roderick Kirikoff. And that's a beautiful book, and it's got a ton of different quilts in. So I do like my books. I like a bit of a reference, have a bit of a reference library.
Yeah. Well, I find, you know, some days you don't want to quilt. Some days you just want to be inspired.
Yeah, completely agree. I completely agree. It's nice to relax and have a cup of tea and just have it. Yeah, just read a book.
Now I really want to have a pint. Yeah, well, like when will we be able to travel again?
It feels, every time I think it's getting close, something happens and it feels like it moves back. But hopefully next year. Yeah, I've been super lucky really, and I've based my last 2 holidays around when Quilt Con is, because I wanted to go to Nashville for some time, and then I wanted to go to Austin. And yeah, I love both those cities.
Well, Quilt Canada is going to be in Toronto next year. If Toronto's open.
Oh, is it? That'll be exciting. I've never been to Canada.
Toronto's very much like London. Like, it's just a blend of so many different cultures.
Right. It sounds amazing. I've got friends that have been, but I've just never really had the opportunity.
One day, bring your son.
Oh yeah, he'd like it, I'm sure.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for being with us today. It's been so fun getting to know you. I hope QuiltCon comes back to being soon, and we'll sit down and have a pint together.
Oh, absolutely.
Just go over your handles again. They can find you on Instagram at A Full English.
Yep.
And
then
do you have a website?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, it's chrisenglishquilts.com. Fairly straightforward.
Thank you very much, and hope to see you soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Links to all Chris's contact information will be in the notes below. And the link to the book, Quilts, from the Encyclopedia of Inspiration series by Uppercase will also be in the notes below. If you enjoyed this interview, please check out some of my past interviews on Karen's Quilt Circle. Coming November 30th, I'll be speaking with Pearl Ann Gooding, and we are going to be talking about generational quilting and group projects. And last Friday, I uploaded Organizing Your Sewing Space, Part 1. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell beside the subscribe button so that YouTube will notify you when I make new videos. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Pinterest at Jessica Da Done Quilts. And of course, sign up for my newsletter on my website at jessicadadonequilts.com. So take care, and I'll see you next time.